My name is Richard Hale. I am 67 years old, and for more than 3 decades, my hands have shaped the walls, floors, and lights of the Aurora Mirage Resort in Las Vegas. I am not a gambler. I am a builder, a man who poured his life into turning desert sand into something that breathed. My late wife, Evelyn, was the heart behind it all. Together, we built more than a casino. We built a promise. Tonight, that promise was about to be tested, in front of 400 guests, wearing diamonds and false smiles. The ballroom shimmered beneath chandeliers shaped like falling stars. The orchestra played a soft jazz version of Fly Me to the Moon. My son, Daniel, stood near the head table, his new bride, Victoria Lane, glowing in a gown that looked like liquid silver. She was radiant, the kind of woman who knew how to hold a room in her palm, and beside her, her father, Martin Lane, watched everything with the calm ownership of a man who believed the world belonged to him. Martin had built hotels across the Strip, and he saw the Aurora Mirage as the missing jewel in his empire. I had spent years keeping him out of it. Evelyn used to call him the smile that sells hurricanes. I understood why the moment he stepped to the microphone. Family, he began, his voice smooth as the champagne he raised, is about legacy. About passing on what we've built so the next generation can make it greater. The crowd applauded politely. His gaze swept the room and landed on me. And tonight, he continued, our families become one. What better symbol of trust than this? He gestured toward me. Richard, my dear friend, the man who designed the Aurora Mirage from the ground up. A true visionary. And a father who understands the importance of letting go. The orchestra faded into silence. Every camera in the room pointed our way. Come, Richard, he said with a grin that never touched his eyes. Be the proud father. Hand over the keys. Sign over your shares to Daniel and Victoria. And let the world witness this new chapter. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd misheard him. The laughter, the music, even the clinking of glasses stopped. All I could hear was the faint hum of the air conditioning and my own pulse. Daniel looked at me nervously. Dad, he whispered. It's just symbolic. We can talk later, but it wasn't symbolic. The legal folder sitting on the table wasn't a prop. I recognized the logo of Lane Holdings on the corner. It was a real transfer agreement. I stood slowly. Martin, I said, keeping my voice calm. This is neither the time nor the place. He spread his hands as if he were blessing me. Oh, come on, Richard. You've done your part. Let the next generation lead. It's a party, not a courtroom. Laughter rippled through the crowd, brittle and uncertain. I looked at my son, the boy who once helped me plant the first palm tree outside the Mirage. His expression pleaded for me not to embarrass him. He didn't see the trap. He never saw how Martin used family as a weapon. I built this resort with your mother, I said quietly. It stays with our family. Martin's smile thinned. Are you refusing your own son's future? I'm protecting it. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. Then maybe you should find another casino to sleep in, old man. The insult hung in the air like smoke. A few guests gasped. Others forced laughter. Unsure if it was part of the show, I placed my napkin on the table, smoothed my jacket, and nodded once toward Daniel. Congratulations, son. Then I turned and walked out. No one stopped me. The doors closed behind me, muffling the music that started up again to cover the embarrassment. The night air outside was sharp and dry, filled with the neon heartbeat of the city Evelyn once loved. Back at my apartment overlooking the Strip, I loosened my tie and stared at the framed photograph of her on the mantel. She was smiling beside the Mirage's foundation pit, dust on her cheeks, wind in her hair. I think it's happening, Eve, I whispered. I opened the old metal case she'd left me 5 years earlier, with a note taped to it. Open when the Mirage turns against you. Inside was a black keycard, a small USB drive, and a sealed legal envelope labeled for Carla Nguyen only. Under the city's flashing lights, I finally understood what she had meant when she once told me, if you ever face a man who mistakes decency for weakness, remember truth can gamble too, and it always knows when to call. The night before the wedding, the city glowed like a furnace made of glass and sin. From my suite on the 32nd floor, I could see the neon sprawl of Las Vegas stretching endlessly into the desert. It was a city that never forgave softness, a city that rewarded the loudest voice and crushed the quiet ones. Evelyn had once called it a beautiful lie built on borrowed luck. The rehearsal dinner was held in Martin Lane's private suite at the Celestia Tower, one of his many properties. Everything about the place screamed wealth. The marble floors imported from Italy, the scent of white orchids, the view of the entire strip, framed by floor-to-ceiling windows. I arrived early, out of courtesy, but everyone else was already deep in conversation. Martin stood near the bar, glass of bourbon in hand, holding court like a king among courtiers. Daniel was beside him, nodding, laughing at the right moments, and Victoria, elegant, poised, radiant, moved through the room with effortless grace, her hand occasionally brushing against Martin's sleeve in silent reassurance. When he saw me, Martin's face split into that familiar politician's smile. "Richard, there you are, the man of the hour, or should I say, the man of the foundation." His words dripped with charm, but I could already taste the poison underneath. He poured me a drink I didn't want. "You know, I've been studying your designs. The Aurora Mirage is a masterpiece. But it's time to modernize, my friend. The future isn't in slot machines and blackjack. It's in data, algorithms, entertainment AI. I have investors ready to inject $2 billion. We could turn that place into the crown jewel of the new Vegas." I took the glass, not to drink, but to give my hands something to do. "And what happens to the people who built it?" I asked. He shrugged. "They'll adapt. Or they'll retire. That's how progress works." Daniel stepped in quickly, sensing tension. "Dad, Martin's vision is incredible. He's already shown me some of the plans. The new Mirage would be global: Tokyo, Dubai, Monaco. He wants me to help lead the expansion." I stared at my son. He was 35, successful, and hungry. But I could see it now, the same hunger that had devoured better men than Martin Lane. "You've already decided?" I asked quietly. He shifted uncomfortably. "It's just business, Dad. You don't have to take it so personally." Victoria appeared at his side, a soft hand resting on his arm. "Richard," she said sweetly, "you've built something extraordinary. But you deserve to rest. Daniel can carry it forward. Isn't that what every father wants?" Her words were gentle, but her eyes weren't. There was calculation behind them, the kind that measured people like assets. I smiled faintly. "Evelyn used to say the same thing," I said. But when she said it, she meant rest after the harvest, not after the theft. The conversation faltered. Martin broke the silence with a booming laugh. "You always were a poet, Richard, but business is numbers, not poetry." He raised his glass again. "To legacy, ours and yours." Everyone echoed him, glasses clinking, smiles too bright. The toast sounded like a eulogy. I excused myself early, claiming fatigue. Outside the suite, the hallway was quiet, except for the hum of distant music. I pressed the elevator button and looked at my reflection in the mirrored wall. The man staring back at me looked tired, yes, but not beaten. Evelyn's words came back to me, whispered from memory. "When a man tells you he respects your work but mocks your ethics, believe the mockery." I walked through the casino floor below, past the fountains and slot machines, past laughter that sounded hollow under the flashing lights. I remembered the first day Evelyn and I stood on this land. Back then, it was just a barren stretch of dust and wind. We'd driven out here with blueprints and coffee and paper cups. She'd pointed to the horizon and said, "You can build anything you want out here, Rich. Just promise me one thing: never build it for men who gamble with people instead of cards." Standing there that night, surrounded by noise and greed disguised as celebration, I realized that promise was the only thing still keeping me whole. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside, the smell of stale perfume and cigarette smoke clinging to my jacket. I looked down at my hand, steady, still strong, and whispered, "They have no idea who they're dealing with." Outside, the lights of Las Vegas pulsed like a living thing, feeding on ambition and arrogance. Inside, I felt something colder, sharper, awaken in me a patience that Evelyn once called the calm before the turn of the cards. The morning of the wedding broke clear and sharp, sunlight slicing across the desert like glass. From my balcony, I could see the strip glowing in the distance. A line of gold and smoke. It should have been a beautiful day, but everything about it felt wrong. The air too still, the silence too heavy. I had been awake since before dawn, unable to shake the echo of Martin's voice from the night before. Legacy, progress, modernization. Words he wielded like tools to pry open the things other men held sacred. I showered, shaved, put on the black suit Evelyn had once said, made me look too serious for a party, and tried to convince myself that the day would pass quietly. I was wrong. A knock came at my door just as I was tightening my tie. 3 short raps, confident, impatient. I didn't have to ask who it was. Martin Lane stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. He was already dressed for the ceremony, his white tuxedo crisp, his gold cufflinks gleaming. He carried no gift, no well wishes, only a black leather portfolio tucked under his arm. "Morning, Richard," he said, his tone all smooth courtesy. "Mind if I come in?" He was already halfway across the room. He set the portfolio on my dresser, flicked it open, and began laying out a series of documents, neat as playing cards. "Before the festivities begin," he said, "there's something important to finalize. A small matter, really. Just family housekeeping." I didn't move closer. "I told you last night, I'm not interested in any more of your deals." "This isn't a deal," he said. "It's an opportunity." He pushed the first page toward me. Across the top, I saw the name Aurora Mirage Holdings, LLC. Beneath it, a signature line already prepared for me. "This is a restructuring agreement," he explained, his voice slipping into the easy rhythm of a salesman. "A simple transfer of voting rights from you to Daniel and Victoria. Purely procedural. You'll retain honorary status as founder emeritus. We'll even name one of the new wings after Evelyn. The Evelyn Hale Pavilion, how about that?" I studied his face. He was proud of that line, thinking it would soften me. It didn't. "And in return?" I asked. He smiled thinly. "In return, you'll be relieved of responsibility. No more board meetings, no financial stress. You can spend your days however you want. Gardening, fishing, writing that memoir I'm sure you've been meaning to write." The folder's second page caught my eye. A paragraph buried halfway down in legal jargon: "All proprietary architectural designs, operational algorithms, and affiliated intellectual property shall transfer to Lane Holdings Incorporated." I looked up slowly. "This isn't about retirement. You're gutting my life's work," he sighed as though talking to a stubborn child. "Richard, come on. You're tired. Everyone can see it. The world moves faster now. You and Evelyn built a legacy, yes, but it's time to let professionals scale it. Think about Daniel. Think about his future. You wouldn't want to hold him back, would you?" His voice had that calm menace I'd heard in men who believed kindness was weakness. I walked to the window, staring at the city below its towers glittering like coins in a dealer's hand. "When Evelyn and I built the Mirage," I said quietly, "we didn't build it for men like you." He turned sharply. "Men like me are the reason it still exists." I faced him then. "Men like you are the reason cities collapse." The mask slipped for a second. Just a flicker. The easy charm vanished, replaced by a cold impatience. "If you don't sign now," he said softly, "I'll make sure you never step foot in that building again. You'll be out before the honeymoon's over." I took one step closer. "You can't threaten a man who's already buried the love of his life." He hesitated, thrown off by the steadiness of my voice. For the first time, I saw it, the fear under all that polish. "Enjoy your day, Martin," I said, closing the folder and sliding it back toward him. "You'll need it." He gave a quiet laugh, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We'll talk after the ceremony," he said. "After you've had time to think about what your son deserves." When the door closed behind him, the silence felt heavier than before. I stared at the black leather folder on the dresser, his cologne still clinging to it like smoke. Outside, the sun climbed higher over the desert, burning the horizon gold. Somewhere in the distance, the wedding orchestra was already rehearsing. I took one last look at Evelyn's photograph on the bedside table, her smile caught mid-laughter, her eyes bright with secrets. I whispered to her memory, "You were right. The Mirage has turned against us." Then I opened the drawer of my nightstand and took out the metal case. Inside, the black keycard glimmered faintly in the light. I slipped it into my jacket pocket. The war had officially begun. By late afternoon, the desert sky turned molten gold, the kind of light that makes every shadow sharp. The aurora mirage gleamed like a crown beneath it, fountains glittering, cameras flashing. Guests arrived in black limousines, champagne in hand, ready to witness the union of wealth and ambition. I stood near the back of the ballroom, alone. The chandeliers shimmered above me, their reflections dancing on marble floors. Every detail screamed perfection. The floral arches, the string quartet, the cameras from local networks streaming the wedding of the year. But beneath the luxury, I could feel the unease pulsing like an underground current. When the ceremony ended and the reception began, Martin Lane was in his element. He moved through the crowd like a general after victory, laughing too loudly, shaking hands, whispering deals even as the bride and groom danced their first song. He didn't just want a son-in-law, he wanted the whole empire that came with him. I stayed silent, nursing a glass of water, watching Daniel twirl Victoria under the chandeliers. My son's smile was radiant, but something hollow lived behind it. I wondered if he could hear the faint echo of the man pulling his strings. An hour later, the lights dimmed slightly. A clinking of glass drew the room's attention. Martin stood at the stage, microphone in hand, confidence radiating from him like perfume. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "thank you for joining us tonight. Today is not only the union of two extraordinary young people, it's the merging of two legacies. The Hale family and the Lane family, united in vision, strength, and purpose." The crowd cheered politely. I set my glass down. Something in his tone told me he wasn't finished. "And tonight," he continued, his voice rich with false warmth, "we mark the beginning of a new chapter, one that honors the past while embracing the future." He gestured toward me. "Richard Hale, the visionary who built the Aurora Mirage, a man of craftsmanship, honor, and heart. Without him, this city wouldn't shine quite so bright." Applause filled the room. I stayed seated. Martin smiled wider. "And because he understands that a legacy is meant to be shared, he's agreed to gift his shares of the Aurora Mirage to Daniel and Victoria as their wedding present." The applause turned thunderous. Cameras flashed. Guests rose from their chairs. But I didn't move. I didn't clap. I just looked at him. Martin waited for me to stand. I didn't. The silence stretched. Then Daniel, confused, came to me. "Dad, it's okay," he whispered. "It's just symbolic." I looked at him, my son, the boy who used to draw casino blueprints beside me at the kitchen table. "Do you really believe that?" I asked softly. "Please," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." Martin stepped down from the stage, the microphone still in his hand. He approached me, smiling for the cameras. "Come now, Richard. Don't ruin the moment. Just a signature, a gesture of faith." I met his gaze. "No," the smile faltered. "I beg your pardon?" I stood slowly, the chair scraping the polished floor. My voice was quiet but carried across the ballroom. I said no. I will not sign. I will not hand over my shares. And I will not let you dress up greed as legacy. The orchestra stopped mid-note. You could hear the soft gasp ripple through the room. Martin's jaw clenched. "Don't do this," he hissed, low enough for only me to hear. "You'll regret it." I smiled faintly. "I already do." Something dark crossed his face. His hand twitched at his side. He turned to the guests and forced a laugh. "Our dear Richard is joking, of course." Always dramatic, but the laughter never came. The silence was absolute, and then, as if to reclaim control, he reached for the folder on the nearby table, snapping it open. "Sign it," he said under his breath. Now, I met his eyes one last time. Over my dead body, the room tilted into chaos. I heard Daniel shout, "Dad, stop!" and Victoria gasp, "Martin!" But the only sound that truly reached me was the blood rushing in my ears. I didn't raise my voice. I simply straightened my jacket, looked at my son, and walked toward the exit. The cameras followed me, the light blinding. Behind me, Martin's voice cracked through the microphone again, shaky, defensive. "Well, folks, every family has its stubborn one. The laughter this time was forced, hollow, fading fast. Outside, the desert night had cooled. The fountains hissed, throwing up silver arcs into the dark. I walked past them, each step steadier than the last. The sky above Las Vegas was a black velvet dome pricked with neon light. Back home, I poured a cup of black coffee and sat at my desk. The USB drive Evelyn had left lay before me, catching the faint reflection of the strip. I turned it between my fingers, remembering her words. If they ever corner you, don't fight their noise with noise. Use the truth. It's quieter, but it hits harder. I inserted the drive into my laptop. The screen came alive with a single folder named Project Horizon, and just like that, the game changed. The next morning, sunlight leaked through the blinds in narrow bands of gold, slicing across my desk. I hadn't slept. The coffee on my table had gone cold hours ago, untouched beside the glowing laptop screen. The file Evelyn had left Project Horizon waited like a sealed door. My hand hovered over the mouse before I finally clicked. Inside were subfolders, dozens of them, each labeled in Evelyn's precise style. Accounts 2000 and 15 2020. Private ledger. Board amendments. Video evidence. My breath caught when I opened the first. Every entry, every transaction, every signature. It was all there. A story written in numbers and betrayal. Evelyn had always been quiet about the finances, even when she got sick. I'd thought she did it to spare me. Now I realized she'd been fighting a war I hadn't even known existed. The first document I opened was an amendment dated 2015, co-signed by Evelyn, and filed discreetly with the Nevada Business Registry. It transferred full voting authority for our family's shares to her, irrevocable, permanent, and binding upon her death to a legal trust I'd never heard of. The Hale Foundation for Employee Equity. I whispered her name like a prayer. Evelyn hadn't just protected our family. She'd protected every worker at the Mirage. I scrolled further, and the deeper I went, the darker it became. There were bank statements from Lane Holdings, showing shell transfers between offshore accounts in the Caymans and Panama. Fake invoices, ghost companies. A series of payments labeled consulting fees directed to regulators and even a few city officials. Then came the one that made me sit back in shock. A $2.5 million wire from Lane Development Fund to an account under Daniel's name. My son's name. I stared at it for a long time, refusing to believe it. But the evidence was right there. The memo line read simply, "Dear God, Daniel," I muttered. I rubbed my eyes, the room spinning. I needed help. I picked up my phone and called Carla Nguyen. She answered on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep but sharp the moment she heard mine. "Richard? What happened? I need you to come to my apartment. Bring your laptop. Now." She didn't ask why. Within 40 minutes, she was there. Hair still damp from a rushed shower, a leather satchel slung across her shoulder. Carla had been Evelyn's protégé back when we first opened the Mirage. She knew my wife's mind almost as well as I did. When she saw the folder open on the screen, her expression changed from concern to shock. "You're kidding," she whispered, scrolling rapidly. She filed this through an alternate trust line. "Richard, this amendment gives her permanent voting control even beyond her lifetime. Do you understand what that means? Lane can't touch your shares. He can't even contest them." Evelyn built a firewall. She scrolled further, her eyes widening. Oh my God. It was a video file. I double-clicked it, and a grainy security recording filled the screen. The date stamp read the 17th of October, 2018, months before Evelyn's health had worsened. The footage showed Martin Lane sitting in a conference room at one of his hotels, talking to a man in a gray suit. "Make sure the Gaming Commission signs off on the new expansion permits," Martin was saying. "They'll get their cut, you'll get yours. And the Hales? They'll be out of the picture by next year." I froze the video. Carla covered her mouth. "He bribed regulators," she said quietly. "He planned this for years." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the paused image of Martin's smug, confident face. "She knew," I whispered. "Evelyn knew everything." Carla opened another subfolder, this one labeled Personal note. Inside was a single document. A letter written in Evelyn's neat cursive. If you're reading this, Rich, then Martin finally made his move. I've left you everything you need to fight him. But more importantly, to finish what we started. You built the Mirage. I protected it. Now you must save it. The keycard gives you access to a restricted server inside the old security hub. Carla knows the rest. Don't fight him with anger. Fight him with truth. And when you win, don't do it for revenge. Do it for the people who believed in us. Love always, Eve. I couldn't move for a long time. Her words felt alive, wrapping around me like a whisper from another life. When I finally spoke, my voice cracked. She was still taking care of me. Carla nodded, eyes glistening. She was building your armor before the war even started. We spent the next few hours cataloging everything: financial records, video clips, email threads. Each piece painted a clearer picture. Martin Lane was not just greedy, he was desperate. His empire was hollow, propped up by fraud and borrowed time. Carla turned to me. We could take this straight to the feds. The Gaming Commission, the IRS, they'd tear him apart. I shook my head. Not yet. Not until he knows exactly who's holding the cards. She frowned. You're planning something. I looked at Evelyn's photo on the bookshelf, the sunlight catching the glass. I'm planning to finish what my wife started. For the first time in months, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Not peace, exactly, but purpose. Carla closed her laptop and straightened. Then I'll stand with you. The morning sun rose higher, washing the room in white light. Outside, the Strip was waking up, oblivious to the storm about to hit it. I reached for the keycard, turning it in my hand, its metallic edge catching the light. Let's open the Mirage, I said quietly, and show them what's hiding behind the glitter. By nightfall, the Strip was alive again, sirens of neon calling gamblers to their kingdoms of light and illusion. But in my apartment, the only light came from the glow of Carla's laptop screen. The air was thick with the scent of burnt coffee and adrenaline. We weren't just fighting for a company anymore. We were fighting for Evelyn's legacy, for truth, and for every person who'd ever been told they were replaceable. Carla sat cross-legged on the floor, cables sprawled around her like vines. On my desk, a second monitor flickered with lines of encrypted data. She had accessed the Mirage's internal archives using the keycard Evelyn left me. This is incredible, she murmured. She built her own digital vault under the old security hub. Lane's team never found it. Inside, the hidden directory was an entire map of the resort's digital infrastructure. Every financial record, surveillance feed, and corporate transaction dating back 15 years. Evelyn had copied everything before her death. Carla pointed at one folder. Here, payments to subcontractors. Look at this pattern. Every 6 months, money disappears through a shell construction firm registered to a P.O. box in Reno. Guess who owns the P.O. box? I leaned closer. Martin Lane? She nodded grimly. And Daniel's name is on some of the invoices. I think Lane used your son's trust account to launder the payments. Daniel probably had no idea. The words stung, but deep down, I already knew. Martin had always used people's love as a weapon. I rubbed my temple. We need proof. Something irrefutable. Carla smiled faintly. Then we'll get it. She called an old friend, David Grant, the former head of security at the Mirage, who'd retired after a quiet disagreement with Lane's board. Within an hour, he was at my door, gray hair tied back, eyes alert like a man who'd never fully left the field. Been a long time, Richard, he said, gripping my hand. Heard about the wedding? Hell of a way to toast a legacy. Carla briefed him quickly. David listened in silence, his expression darkening with every detail. When she mentioned the internal vault, he let out a low whistle. Your wife was a genius, he said. There's one more thing she might have hidden. Every camera feed from the Mirage used to back up to a secure server we called the Mirror Room. It was her idea to make sure nothing could ever be deleted without a trace. If we can access that, we can prove everything Lane's done. Within minutes, the three of us were in David's truck, heading toward the Mirage. The city blurred past a storm of color and noise that felt 1,000,000 miles away from what we were about to do. We parked in the employee lot behind the resort. David led us through a service entrance, his old security badge still functional after all these years. The air inside the back corridors was cool, sterile, filled with the hum of machinery. He guided us down 2 levels to a steel door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." "This is it," he said. "The mirror room." He entered a manual override code, and the lock clicked. The door opened to reveal rows of humming servers, each blinking with faint blue light. Carla set up her laptop, connecting directly to the central node. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. "Give me 5 minutes," she said. David handed me a flashlight. "You know, Lane fired me because I refused to shut down the cameras during his private investor tours. Always wondered what he didn't want recorded." Carla's voice broke in, tense but excited. "Got it." The monitor filled with thumbnails, video after video, all time-stamped and cataloged. We clicked through one, dated March 3rd, 2019. The footage showed Martin in his office, shaking hands with a man in a dark suit. Audio crackled faintly. 2 million by Friday, Martin was saying. Then we file the paperwork showing Hale's liquidity loss. The press won't ask questions, they never do. My stomach tightened. David grinned grimly. But before Carla could export the file, an alert flashed on her screen. Remote access detected. Someone was trying to override our connection. "Damn it," she hissed. "He's locking the system." David pulled out a small drive and plugged it into the server. "Copying everything locally. Even if he wipes it, this will survive." The lights flickered once, twice. Then power stabilized. The copy finished just as the feed went dead. Carla yanked the drive out. "We've got it." David turned to me. "Now what?" I looked at the little flash drive in Carla's hand, the weight of 1,000 secrets compressed into metal and plastic. "Now," I said quietly, "we make sure the right people see it." That night, Carla drafted a comprehensive report to the Nevada Gaming Commission and attached all the evidence, financial trails, bribery videos, ownership fraud. Then she encrypted everything and scheduled an automatic delivery at 9 a.m. the next morning. One copy went to the FBI's White-Collar Crimes Division, another to several national news outlets. When she hit send later, the room fell silent. Outside the window, the Mirage sign shimmered red and gold, the reflection of a kingdom about to burn. Carla exhaled. "It's done. In less than 12 hours, every regulator and journalist in Nevada will have this file." David chuckled softly. "You've just put a bomb under Lane's empire." I stared at the city lights, my reflection ghosted against the glass. "Evelyn built the fuse," I said. "We just lit it." Carla smiled faintly. "Then all we have to do is watch it explode." I shook my head. "No, we wait. And when he comes for us, and he will, we show him that the mirage he tried to steal still belongs to the truth." Outside, thunder rolled in from the desert, rare for Vegas. Lightning flashed once over the strip, bright and brief. It felt like an omen. By dawn, the sky would break open, and so would his empire. The next morning, the mirage looked the same from the outside, lights glittering, fountains dancing, but inside its marble walls, a silent panic was spreading like smoke. By 8 o'clock, news anchors across the country were repeating the same headline: "Federal investigation targets Lane Holdings over casino bribery and fraud." Carla's email had detonated exactly as planned. By 10, Lane's company stock had plummeted 30%. Investors were calling emergency meetings. The Nevada Gaming Commission announced a formal audit. The FBI had quietly sealed several of Lane's offices pending review. It was no longer rumor, it was law. I sat by my window with a mug of coffee, watching the storm build on the television screen. Each broadcast replayed the same footage: Martin Lane at ribbon cuttings, shaking hands with senators, smiling beside his daughter and my son. The louder the news got, the quieter the city seemed to become. My phone buzzed. Caller ID, Daniel. For a moment, I almost didn't answer. Then I did. "Dad," he said, his voice shaking. "What did you do?" "What your mother would have done," I said. "You ruined him. You ruined everything." "No, son," I said softly. "He ruined himself. I just turned on the lights so you could see it." He was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, His tone was small, frightened. His lawyers came this morning. They said my name's on some of the transfers. I didn't know, Dad. I swear I didn't know. I believe you, I said. But you'll have to prove it. How? Come to the Mirage, I said. You'll find your answer there. By afternoon, the entire city buzzed with whispers of the collapse. Reporters gathered outside Lane's penthouse. Cameras swarmed his offices. Rumor said he was on his way to confront the Gaming Commission. He wasn't. At 5 sharp, I received another call. David Grant. He's coming, David said. Lane's personal jet landed half an hour ago. His driver's heading straight to the Mirage. Good, I said, standing. Let him. Carla met me in the main conference hall of the resort, the same room where Evelyn and I had hosted our first staff dinner 25 years ago. Now it was empty, quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning and the soft shuffle of papers. She placed the legal file on the table, the final envelope Evelyn had sealed, the one marked Founder's Clause. Are you sure you want to do this here? Carla asked. This is where it began, I said. This is where it ends. Minutes later, Daniel arrived. He looked exhausted, pale, his tie loose around his neck. Dad, the press is everywhere. They're saying Mom's trust controls the Mirage. Is that true? I nodded. You'll see for yourself soon. Then the doors burst open. Martin Lane strode in, flanked by 2 of his lawyers, sweat gleaming on his forehead despite the air conditioning. The smile he'd worn at the wedding was gone, replaced by a snarl stretched too tight. You self-righteous bastard, he hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? I do, I said. You built your empire on lies, and it finally folded. He slammed a hand on the table. You think a few files will destroy me? I own this city, Carla spoke for the first time. Not anymore, Mr. Lane. The FBI froze all your domestic accounts this morning. You'll find your credit line has vanished. And your offshore accounts? Already flagged. His eyes darted between us, panic flickering through the rage. You can't. Oh, but we can. She interrupted. Your wife's name. Your daughter's foundation. Every holding you've built. They all tie back to the same fraudulent shell companies. It's over. He turned to me, his face twisted. You think this will bring your wife back? I looked at him evenly. No, but it'll make sure no one like you ever touches what she built. He laughed a harsh, broken sound. You old fool. You just killed your son's future. I turned to Daniel. Show him, son. Daniel hesitated, then reached into his briefcase and pulled out a printed email. He handed it to Martin with trembling hands. Martin scanned it, his expression darkening with every line. What is this? The FBI subpoena, Daniel said. They found out the accounts you used to pay the regulators were under my trust number. You forged my signature. Martin went still. I didn't know, Daniel said, his voice cracking. I thought those payments were for charity partnerships. You used me. Martin's jaw worked silently. Then his temper exploded. You ungrateful child, everything you have is because of me. Daniel stepped back. No, everything I had was because of him. He pointed at me. You just borrowed it. For the first time since I'd met him, Martin Lane looked small. I reached for the sealed envelope on the table and slid it across to Carla. Read it. She broke the wax seal and unfolded the document, her voice steady. This is a notarized amendment to the Articles of Incorporation, signed and filed by Evelyn Hale in 2019. It transfers her controlling interest 52% of the Aurora Mirage into the Hale Foundation for employee ownership, effective upon her death. The words hit the room like thunder, Carla continued. That means every employee who worked here for more than 5 years now owns a share of the resort. It cannot be sold, transferred, or merged without the board's unanimous consent. And that board, she looked directly at Lane, does not include you. The color drained from his face. He stumbled back into a chair, his lawyers whispering frantically in his ear. He didn't hear them. He was staring at me with hollow fury. You think this will last? He muttered. It already has, I said quietly. Outside, sirens wailed, approaching fast. FBI agents moved through the lobby, led by David Grant. He nodded once at me before flashing his badge at Lane's lawyers. Mr. Lane, We need you to come with us. The billionaire who once ruled the Strip said nothing. He stood slowly, his hands shaking as he buttoned his jacket. When he passed me, he paused for a fraction of a second, his voice a rasp. You'll regret this. I met his eyes. No, Martin. I'll remember it. He walked out between two agents, the door closing behind him with a final, echoing thud. Daniel sat heavily in a chair, face in his hands. Dad, I don't know how to fix any of this. I put a hand on his shoulder. You start by learning what it means to build something honest. The rest will follow. Carla exhaled slowly, her expression softening. It's over. I looked around the quiet conference hall, at the place where my wife and I had built a dream from dust. No, I said softly. It's beginning. Outside the window, dusk was settling over the desert, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. The mirage still glowed, but now it felt different, like the lights were shining for the first time in years. Not for greed, but for something real. 1 year later, the Aurora mirage was almost unrecognizable. The same fountain still shimmered beneath the desert sun, but the air felt different, lighter, warmer, alive. Tourists filled the halls, but now they passed walls lined with photographs of the employees who had built this place, not the men who once exploited them. The resort had been renamed the Evelyn Hale Cooperative Resort. Her name stood at the entrance in graceful bronze letters, framed by desert roses and olive trees. Every worker from the dealers to the housekeepers owned a part of it now. They called it our mirage. I walked through the lobby that morning, cane in hand, nodding to the familiar faces who greeted me with genuine smiles instead of forced politeness. I wasn't their boss anymore. I was their equal, an old man with coffee stains on his sleeve, still amazed at how one woman's foresight had rebuilt an entire world. Carla stood by the reception desk, tablet in hand, juggling calls from sponsors and charities. She caught sight of me and smiled. You're supposed to be resting, Richard. I'll rest when the paint dries, I said, looking up at the newly hung portrait of Evelyn above the main staircase. In it, she was laughing, not the poised smile of corporate portraits, but the open, radiant laugh I'd fallen in love with 40 years ago. David Grant entered from the courtyard, still broad-shouldered despite his years. We just finished setting up the Veterans Scholarship Fund, he said, handing me a folder. 50 applicants in the first week. Evelyn would have loved that. She believed dignity was built one small act at a time. And then there was Daniel. He walked toward me from the elevators, carrying a stack of documents. Sleeves rolled up. No tie. A humble expression replacing the arrogance he'd once worn like armor. Morning, Dad, he said quietly. He now served as the Director of Sustainable Operations. It wasn't a glamorous title, but he'd earned it the hard way by learning, apologizing, and working alongside the people his old world had ignored. Morning, I replied, studying him. His eyes were clearer now. The restless shine replaced by something steadier. I finished the quarterly report, he said. Profits are up 15%, but more importantly, employee retention is at an all-time high. I smiled. Your mother would be proud. He hesitated, then nodded. I know. I still talk to her sometimes, when I walk through the vineyards behind the resort. I felt a lump in my throat but didn't speak. Some silences don't need to be filled. That evening, we gathered on the rooftop terrace for the first anniversary gala. The same ballroom that once hosted my humiliation, now overflowed with laughter and live jazz. The chandeliers sparkled above tables, filled with the very people who had once feared layoffs or replacement. Dealers, waiters, janitors, chefs all dressed in their best, proud to belong to something that finally belonged to them. Carla stood at the podium first. This resort survived because one woman planned for truth, not greed, she said, and because her husband believed that integrity is not a weakness, it's a weapon no one sees coming. Applause rolled through the terrace like thunder. Then Daniel took the stage. His voice trembled at first, but then steadied. I used to think success was measured by how much you could take, he said. My father taught me it's measured by how much you can give back. I betrayed his trust once, even without meaning to, but he never stopped believing I could change. And tonight, standing here, I know the mirage didn't save us. It reminded us who we were. When the applause finally faded, Daniel looked at me, eyes glistening. Dad, this is your moment. I shook my head. No, son. It's hers. Still, they insisted. So, I walked up to the microphone. The crowd fell quiet. The city lights of Las Vegas glowing like constellations around us. I won't take much of your time, I began. You all know what this place was, a monument to wealth. But what it has become, that's something my wife believed in long before the rest of us did. Evelyn used to say, truth and decency are like roots in the desert. They take a long time to grow, but once they do, nothing tears them out. She was right. When greed tried to bury us, she had already planted the seeds of our redemption, and all we had to do was water them. I looked toward her portrait, hanging behind the stage. This resort isn't a miracle. It's proof that what's built with honesty outlasts what's built with lies. And the greatest revenge against corruption isn't ruin, it's rebuilding. There was a pause, and then the applause rose again, loud, full, alive. For the first time in a long time, it wasn't for me. It was for her. Later that night, I stood alone on the balcony, the desert wind brushing against my face. Below me, the lights of the strip shimmered, and in the distance, a faint echo of music carried on the air. Daniel joined me quietly, holding 2 glasses of wine. To Mom, he said softly. To Evelyn, I agreed, raising my glass. We drank in silence, the stars burning steady above the desert. Somewhere, I like to think, she was laughing again, pleased that the house she built had finally been set right. Before heading back inside, I turned one last time to the city skyline, now glowing with a softer kind of light. For years, I'd thought the mirage was my legacy. Now I understood it was hers, and maybe, in the end, that was the real miracle. That a woman who saw through every illusion left behind something no amount of deceit could ever destroy. Lesson: true wealth doesn't live in bank accounts or boardrooms. It lives in the quiet strength of integrity, in the courage to stand against greed, and in the people who carry your values when you're gone. Evelyn taught me that revenge means little unless it restores dignity, and that the loudest victories often begin with the quiet decision to do what's right. As the lights dimmed and laughter drifted from the terrace behind me, I whispered into the night. We kept our promise, Eve, and for the first time in a lifetime, the mirage finally felt like home.